Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Uncommon Reader. My name is Daniela, and I'm very excited today to be shooting my first ever Poetry Thursday video. Who would have thought? I have to share with you, though, that I've always been very intimidated by poetry because when I was little at school, they made us learn by heart some of the most famous poems in Italy from Italian authors. And I was so bad at memorizing the lines, and I was always very, very timid and shy. At the moment that I had to recite them, I was so nervous and embarrassed, and I wouldn't remember any of it. So I think that I carried that sensation with me. And only recently I'm warming up to poetry and slowly getting there. It happened that recently, very recently, I stumbled into an Instagram account called Female Poets Society. And I was struck by the actress Helena Bonham Carter reciting some poems. And she had such a beautiful, easy, but intense way of reciting, like she was speaking normally, right? So it didn't give that emphasis, like that theatrical thing that I always associated with it. Also, not being quite a romantic type, I thought, poetry was a little too much. But I want to mention 3 poems read by her that I really enjoyed. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver, Warning by Jenny Joseph, and my favorite, The Guest House by Rumi. So check those out. But today I'm actually here to talk about Iranian poet or poetess who actually became a symbol of feminism in Iran during the 50s and the 60s. I prepared a little bio about Forough Farrokhzad. I hope I pronounce it respectfully. And then I'm going to share a couple of her poems with you.
Forough Farrokhzad was born in Tehran on December 28, 1934. She was an influential Iranian poet and film director. She was a controversial modernist poet and an iconoclastic feminist author. The daughter of a military officer, Colonel Mohammad Bagher Farrokhzad, she was the 4th of 7 children. She attended school until the 9th grade. Then she was taught painting and sewing at a girls' school for the manual arts. At the age of 16, she was married to artist and satirist Parviz Shapur. She continued her education with painting and sewing classes and moved with her husband to Avaz, away from her beloved Tehran. Her only child, a son named Kamyar Shapur, was born a year later. She missed the cultural vibes of Tehran and found ways to visit her family, so to return to the city. Her life and troubled marriage are narrated in the biographical fiction by Jasmine Darnit's Song of a Captive Bird, one of the most emotional books I've read in 2024. After her separation and later divorce in 1954 from her husband, she lost custody of her son because she had had several affairs. Her son Kamyar was taken away from her and brought up by Parviz and his family. Forough was given very few visiting rights, and the child was brought up with the impression that his mother had abandoned him for poetry and the pursuit of her sexual pleasures. The thought of her son thinking that she willingly abandoned him was a source of great sorrow and constant torment for her. Farrokhzad spent 9 months in Europe in 1958. After returning to Iran in search of a job, she met filmmaker and writer Ebrahim Golestan, an Iranian filmmaker and literary figure. The two fell in love. Golestan reinforced her own inclinations to express herself and live independently. She published 2 volumes, The Wall and The Rebellion, before traveling to Tabriz to make a film about Iranians affected by leprosy. This 1962 documentary film titled The House is Black, and I'm sharing the link as the documentary is available online, is considered to be an essential part of the Iranian New Wave movement. Her poetry at that time varied significantly from the former Iranian poetic traditions. Farrokhzad's strong feminine voice became the focus of much negative attention and open disapproval, both during her lifetime and in the posthumous reception of her work. Farrokhzad died in a car accident on February 14, 1967, at the age of 32. Although the exact circumstances of her demise have been the subject of much debate, the official story is that she swerved her Jeep to avoid an oncoming school bus and was thrown out of the car, hitting her head against the curb. It was believed she died before reaching the hospital. However, Farzanek Milani, an Iranian-born American scholar, author, poet, and translator, in her book Forough Farrokhzad, a literary biography with unpublished letters, cited an interview with Golestan, who speaks about Farrokhzad's final moments where she died in his arms. Farrokhzad's poem Let Us Believe in the Dawn of the Cold Season was published posthumously and is considered by some to be one of the best structured modern poems in Persian.
And here it is, this precious edition of Let Us Believe in the Beginning of the Cold Season. I bought this precious book at Moe's in Berkeley. And I do have to read you what the author of Song of the Captive Bird, Jasmine Darznik, is writing in the back of the book. Joy, race, despair, transcendence. Farrokhzad's poem, like the life from which they were often drawn, contain multitudes. In Elizabeth T. Gray's assured translations, each poem is tightly conceived and elegantly modulated, the language precise, the voice as fresh and vivid as Farrokhzad's own, a vital contribution to Farrokhzad's legacy. And about this book. In the years since her tragic death, Forough Farrokhzad has become a poet as influential as Yorka and Akhmatova, celebrated as a feminist trailblazer of Iranian literature and as an iconoclastic figure of contemporary world literature. As Mehdi Yami writes in The Guardian, in every culture you have cultural icons like Shakespeare in Britain. Farrokhzad was like that for contemporary Iran, someone who formed the identity of our contemporariness. Thoughtfully curated and deftly translated by poet Elizabeth T. Gray Jr., this selected poems gathers work from Farrokhzad's whole writing life, early to late, including the entirety of her posthumous book, Let Us Believe in the Beginning of the Cold Season, which gives this collection its name. Readers can thoroughly treasure this expansive poet of desire and loss, of classical reinvention, of lexical variation and sonic beauty, of terrifying wisdom, hope, and grief. So why don't we dive into this book? I didn't read all the poems in this book. I do have selected a couple, and I'll do my best. The first one I chose is Realizing. In the little bubble, light was consuming itself. Suddenly, night filled the window. Night overflowing with a swarm of empty voices. Night poisoned by the heat of venomous breaths. Night. I listened. In the dark, horrified street, it felt as if someone had squashed their hearts underfoot, like a rotten thing. In the dark, horrified street, a star exploded. I listened. My pulse was swollen from the gushing of my blood, and my body also was tempted to decompose. In the crooked lines of the ceiling, I saw my own eyes like a weighty tarantula withering in foam in the yellow, in suffocation. Despite all my movements, I was silting like stagnant water, slowly, slowly. I was becoming sediment in my pit. I listened to my whole life, a disgusting mouse in its hole, shamelessly singing a stupid, meaningless song, a cricket's relentless and incomprehensible chirp turned across the fleeting moment and drifted across the face of oblivion. I was full of lust for death, delirious, a shooting pain in my breasts. I remembered the first day of puberty when my whole body opened in innocent amazement to merge with the vague, that mute, that unknown. In the little bubble, the light yawned itself in a trembling line. Not too easy, I like it. Then I've got another one that I kind of like. I like this one, Grief Worshipper. I wish I were like autumn. I wish I were like autumn. I wish I were like autumn, silent and depressing. The leaves of my desire would turn yellow one by one. The sun of my eyes would grow cold. The sky of my heart would be full of pain. Suddenly a storm of grief would clutch my soul. Like rain, my tears would stain my skirt. Oh, how beautiful it would be if I were autumn. I would be wild and passionate and colorful. In my eyes, a poet would read a heavenly poem. Beside me, in the embers of a painful hidden fire, the lover's heart would flare, my song. Like the voice of a broken-winged wind, grief's perfume would pour over wounded hearts. Before me, the bitter face of youth's winter. Behind me, the tumult of a summer of sudden love. Inside me, the home of grief and pain and suspicion. I wish I were like autumn. I wish I were like autumn. And I have one last, and it's very short. It's called Pear. Evening comes, and after evening, darkness, and after darkness, eyes, hands, and breaths, and the sound of water that pours down, drip, drip, drip from the tap. Then 2 red dots from 2 lit cigarettes, the tick-tock of the clock, and 2 hearts and 2 solitudes. This is Forough. I would encourage you to read her story, narrated by Jasmine Darznik, Song of a Captured Bird. It is a fictionalized biography, but I think that helps getting into knowing the spirit of this woman that had to deal and fight with so many prejudice. And my heart and thoughts go out with all the women in Iran and Afghanistan that unfortunately are not free to express themselves, and how lucky we are to be able to do so. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to see you soon here on Uncommon Reader. In the meantime, happy reading and thanks for your support. Ciao.